Christmas, I met with care workers from my Camborne, Redruth and Hale constituency who came to the UK through legal routes. They shared their anxieties with me about the changes to immigration policies affecting the care sector and other key worker sectors, specifically for migrants who are already partway through the 5-year leave to remain qualification process, working and paying their taxes in the UK now. Can the Secretary of State confirm when the new fast-track leave to remain process will be established following the end of the 12th of February consultation?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. Of course, safe and legal routes relates to those that we would accept as refugees before they enter this country, in order to, of course, drive down on those who seek to do so illegally. He refers to routes for people who come to this country to work, and I think it is right that we acknowledge, as we've done so in our reforms to settlement, our planned reforms to settlement, that settlement itself in this country is a privilege, it's not a right, it has to be earned. I think it's perfectly proper for this country to be able to set the rules for how settlement is earned, and we have responded to the fact that in previous considerations of how many people might arrive on the country to work on particular routes, and the early discussion on care workers I think is particularly pertinent. More people have arrived than were originally anticipated, and it is right therefore that we change our approach, but we are consulting on how those changes are delivered. He rightly points out that consultation ends on the 12th of February. After that point we will set out our proposals for delivering these reforms.
Edward Lee, Father of the House.
Yeah. Of course we're all proud of our historic record in welcoming genuine political refugees who apply in the proper way. But I'm sure the Home Secretary would agree that this policy, this humane policy, is being entirely negated by illegal boat crossings and driving people mad and putting people at risk. So will she do the humane thing and seek an urgent derogation from the Refugee Convention and the Convention of Human Rights so that we can arrest and detain and deport these people? And by the way, if she did that, announced it now, Labour would shoot up 5 points in the polls, the Prime Minister's position would be safe. Does she support all that?
Well, I think it's important that changes are made to our to securing our borders that are about actually genuinely securing those borders and not about individual party political fortunes. And certainly under my watch, this government and the Home Office will always put the securing of our borders first, regardless of what that might mean for individuals and polling positions and so on. I believe that the reforms that we have put out already in the asylum policy statement, I know he was there.
And in the kind of emails that are coming in, it's the sense of fairness that is the big issue, I would say. So do you think it's fair to do this, to change the requirements?
I don't think it's fair. It might not be illegal. This is the issue, and I think the government will no doubt rely on the fact that legally they might be able to do this, but morally I think it's not fair. And also, I should say that in the past, the government and the Home Office have changed the rules for existing visa categories, but in most cases, people on those categories have been grandfathered in, so they have been allowed to stay on the same conditions that they entered in until they get settlement and meet the criteria for settlement, which were those which applied when they first entered the route. That has been the case for most of the big changes.
Do you think that there should be some transitional protections put in place, and if you do, for whom and for how long?
I think that the issue around transitionals, the way that the government sees it, and the proposal seems to suggest that there might be some transitional provisions for those who fall, what they call borderline cases. So this might be somebody who's eligible for settlement the day before the rules come into place, or who might have applied for settlement and the rules change while they're applying. I don't think that's going to help at all if everybody is subject to this being applied to them retrospectively. So my own view is I don't think any of these provisions should apply retrospectively. If they are going to apply retrospectively, then there will need to be some very clear guidance about who will not be affected and who may be able to come out and get settlement if they're almost there. Because you can imagine there's going to be tens of thousands of people who will be affected if the thing comes in the day before they're eligible to apply. And I can't imagine how those people would feel. I don't know how your constituents would feel in those circumstances. And that is the problem, always the problem of applying these rules retrospectively.
All right, so just in case you are not aware, On Monday, the 5th of January 2026, there was another debate. Yes, another debate regarding ILR extension. The MPs came together and they organized this section to ask the Secretary of State their plans regarding immigration, especially for the extension of ILR for health and care worker visa holders, skilled worker visa holders in general, and of course, the recent trend, current happening. We've been hearing stories of workers being exploited. So I think most of the questions that we asked here, we are tailored to that regards. So the very first one on the screen, as you can see, is what steps is she taking to help prevent the exploitation of migrant care workers by private care companies? And this is the response. Exploitation of workers is unacceptable. Overseas recruitment for social care visas closed in July 2025 following significant concerns about exploitation. We have revoked record numbers of sponsor licenses to prevent exploitative employers for sponsoring migrant workers. The government are establishing the Fair Work Agency to provide a more cohesive and streamlined response to exploitation across all sectors. And then the next one is, in recent weeks, I have heard from every social care workers in my constituency who have each outlined to me the profound uncertainty that they face regarding their employer-sponsored visas, despite the critical role that these workers play in supporting the most vulnerable in our communities. What consideration have been given to the idea that these employer-sponsored visas could be replaced with sector-wide scheme to prevent continued poor practice from some employers? I think I made a video regarding this. Remember what Unison did? Check down this channel, you see a video that I have already made where Unison organized a lobby, and this was the main topic, when they had that conversation in Westminster. I think that was exactly what that webinar or what that lobby was all about. So they were fighting for the government to consider approving sector-wide schemes where these care workers will be given the license to choose a company they will work for. Okay, like now they have the visas already, so they are not depending on any employer who may likely exploit them, okay, to continue living and working in the country. And this is the answer to that question. This government acknowledge and are grateful for the significant contribution that health and social care workers put in and day out across the country. However, it was right that we ended the overseas recruitment of care workers due to the high levels of abuse that many workers were experiencing at the hands of doggies employers. There are no current plans to replace the current sponsorship arrangement for care workers. So they are saying now, this is government coming out to tell us that they do not have any plans, okay? They do not have any current plan to replace the current sponsorship arrangement. That's to say, what they are pleading for or what they are suggesting that the government do, they may likely not do that. If you come down here, another MP says, I am disappointed to hear that the minister is not looking at a common certificate of sponsorship. Has he made a decision with his colleagues on whether care workers will be considered in the same group as NHS workers in relation to the faster route? Guys, you see why I said I must bring this to you? I think this person is thinking wisely, to be honest. Has he made a decision with his colleague on whether care workers will be considered in the same group as NHS workers in relation to the faster routes? Otherwise, we are going to end up in a massive hole in our services, with social care yet again being the Cinderella service to the NHS. And again, this is the response. We must remember that hundreds of thousands came into the country to fill just tens of thousands of jobs. So this is the right approach here. There are no plans at this time, but the mechanism of delivery is currently at consultation, and that closes on 12 February. My constituent, a migrant care worker, was asked to pay £3,600 to her employer, a private care company, for a sponsorship application that never happened. The company is now keeping the money with no legal reason and refusing to engage with my constituent. This is not the only case I am aware of. Will the minister take stronger action, including suspending licenses and prosecuting companies that exploit vulnerable workers? God will bless this particular person. I read somewhere, and I think at the time I read also to you guys, where someone suggested similar thing, that these people are vulnerable. Instead of just collecting their sponsor license, I mean the employers, why not collect their license and also prosecute them? So this is the same suggestion that this MP is bringing out. Let's see the response. So as you can see, this is the response he got. It is important that we hold doggy employers to account. Penalties are in place for those employing illegal workers, as it is a potential prison sentence for illegal working. In the care sector, we saw hundreds of thousands come into the country to fill a very small number of jobs. So it is right to stop this social care visa at this point. The next person asks, health and social care workers fear not only exploitation, but the promises may be retrospectively broken by the government. Will the minister confirm that the promise of indefinite leave to remain after 5 years for health and social care workers at Musgrove Park Hospital in my constituency will be honoured? When visas end, people should leave the country, and that is what this government will ensure. There is no route for these people, or else they switch, and that is of course open to them at this point. If the visa ends, they must leave the country. This is what the Secretary of State is saying.
I know you got a dress up for the club.